You think Chinese restaurant chefs go home and spend 3 hours making elaborate dishes after a long shift? Absolutely not. Here are 25 foods Chinese chefs actually cook when they just want something quick, satisfying, and delicious home-cooked meal without the drama. 25. Tomato and egg stir-fry. This is probably the single most beloved lazy meal in all of Chinese home cooking. Every Chinese chef knows this dish by heart because most of them grew up eating it. You just scramble some eggs, set them aside, then toss sliced tomatoes in the same wok with a bit of oil, garlic, salt, sugar, and a tiny splash of soy sauce. The eggs go back in, everything gets tossed together, and you serve it over rice. The whole thing takes maybe 8 minutes. The tomatoes break down into this jammy, slightly sweet and savory sauce that coats the eggs perfectly. It is humble, it is comforting, and it requires almost zero mental energy to pull off. Professional chefs love it precisely because it demands nothing from them after a brutal day on the line. 24. Steamed fish with ginger and scallion. When a chef wants something that feels elegant but requires almost no effort, steamed fish is the answer. You lay a fresh whole fish or a fillet in a steamer, scatter ginger slices on top, steam it for about 10 minutes depending on thickness, then pour soy sauce and a tiny bit of sugar over the top. The final move is draping fresh scallion strips across the fish and then pouring smoking hot oil directly over everything. That sizzle releases the aromatics and creates this deeply fragrant, glossy sauce right on the plate. Clean flavors, minimal cleanup, maximum satisfaction. Chefs do this because quality fresh fish needs almost nothing done to it. 23. Congee. Rice porridge is the ultimate no-effort comfort food in Chinese cuisine. You throw rice into a pot with a lot more water than usual, sometimes a bit of chicken stock, and just let it simmer low and slow until it becomes this thick, creamy, almost silky porridge. The toppings can be whatever you have around. A soft boiled egg, some pickled vegetables, sliced ginger, a drizzle of sesame oil, white pepper. Chefs love congee because once the rice is cooking, you are essentially done. You can walk away, take a shower, relax, and come back to a complete meal. It is nourishing, incredibly easy on the body, and deeply restorative after a physically demanding day. 22. Instant noodles upgraded. Do not underestimate a Chinese chef with a packet of instant noodles. They are not eating it straight from the packet like a college student. They are adding a soft-boiled marinated egg, some leftover braised meat, blanched bok choy, a spoonful of chili oil, and maybe a splash of black vinegar. The result is something that genuinely tastes like restaurant ramen, but took 7 minutes. Chefs know how to amplify simple bases with bold condiments and pantry staples, and instant noodles are the perfect canvas for that. It is the ultimate expression of professional skill applied to the laziest possible starting point. 21. Fried rice. Of course, fried rice makes this list, but what most people do not realize is that home version fried rice a chef makes for themselves is different from restaurant fried rice. At home after a long shift, they're just opening the fridge, grabbing day-old rice, tossing in whatever leftovers exist, cracking a couple eggs in, and hitting it with soy sauce and sesame oil. It is a refrigerator clean-out disguised as a meal, and it is brilliant. The key is always using cold rice from the day before because it fries up dry and separate rather than clumping together. 5 ingredients or fewer, 10 minutes maximum, 1 pan. 20. Hand-torn cabbage. This dish sounds too simple to be worth mentioning, but it is genuinely one of the most popular quick meals among Chinese cooks. You tear fresh cabbage into rough pieces with your hands, which sounds casual but actually helps the cabbage absorb flavors better than knife cuts. Then you blister dried chilies and garlic in very hot oil, throw in the cabbage, and cook it on screaming high heat for just a couple of minutes. A splash of vinegar, a hit of soy sauce, and done. The cabbage stays slightly crisp with charred edges and this sharp, bright flavor. It is incredibly cheap, takes no preparation time, and pairs perfectly with plain rice. 19. Pidan tofu. Century egg with cold silken tofu is perhaps the king of zero cooking required dishes. You just drain a block of silken tofu onto a plate, top it with chopped century egg, pour over a sauce of soy sauce, sesame oil, a tiny bit of sugar, and scatter over some scallions and perhaps some crispy fried shallots. That is it. No heat involved unless you count briefly warming the sauce. The century egg brings this intensely savory, almost creamy quality that plays against the cool, delicate tofu. Chinese chefs appreciate this dish because the flavor payoff is enormous relative to the non-existent effort required. 18. Garlic noodles. Plain noodles with garlic sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but executed correctly. This is one of the most satisfying things you can eat. Cook your noodles, drain them, then in the same pot heat a generous amount of oil with a mountain of thinly sliced or minced garlic. You want the garlic to turn golden and fragrant but not burn. Toss in the noodles with soy sauce, a touch of oyster sauce, sesame oil, and white pepper. The toasted garlic perfumes every strand of noodle with this nutty, savory depth that is genuinely addictive. A Chinese chef can make this with their eyes half closed at midnight, and it will still be excellent. 17. Poached chicken with ginger scallion oil. White-cut chicken is one of the most revered simple preparations in Cantonese cooking. You submerge a whole chicken or pieces in just barely simmering water or stock with ginger and scallion, then poach it gently until just cooked through. The meat stays incredibly juicy and tender because you never actually boil it hard. While the chicken rests, you make the sauce by pouring screaming hot oil over a mix of minced ginger, scallion, and salt. The result is silky, subtly flavored chicken with this intensely aromatic sauce that is one of the great combinations in all of food. Minimal active cooking, maximum result. 16. Mapo tofu. This Sichuan classic looks complicated on a restaurant menu, but is genuinely fast at home. Ground pork gets cooked with Doubanjiang, the spicy fermented bean paste that does most of the flavor-heavy lifting, along with garlic, ginger, and stock. Silken tofu goes in, and the whole thing gets finished with Sichuan peppercorn and scallions. The Doubanjiang is doing so much work that the dish basically seasons itself. An experienced chef can make Mapo tofu in 15 minutes flat, and it is the kind of deeply satisfying, numbing, spicy, savory bowl that genuinely hits every flavor note you want after a hard day. 15. Smashed cucumber salad. You take a cucumber, put it on a cutting board, and just smash it with the flat side of your cleaver or a heavy pan. Then you tear the pieces apart, salt them, let them sit for a few minutes to release water, drain that liquid, and dress it with black vinegar, soy sauce, sesame oil, garlic, and chili oil. The smashing gives the cucumber this rough, jagged surface that grabs onto the dressing far better than any knife cut could. It is cold, crunchy, bright, and spicy. Chefs make this as a side dish alongside whatever else they are cooking because it takes 3 minutes and adds a sharp freshness to balance richer foods. 14. Scallion pancake. This is technically slightly more involved than some others on this list, but experienced cooks can make scallion pancake dough by feel in their sleep. Hot water dough, roll it thin, brush with oil and scallions, roll it up, coil it, press it flat, fry it in a pan with oil until crispy and golden. The layers shatter and flake when you bite in. Chefs love this as a snack or a quick meal because it uses just flour, water, oil, and scallions, ingredients that are almost always available, and the process is meditative and calming after the chaos of a professional kitchen. 13. Steamed egg custard. Chinese steamed egg is the definition of effortless elegance. You beat eggs with warm water or light stock at roughly a 1 to 1.5 ratio, strain the mixture carefully to remove any bubbles, then steam it covered on very low heat for about 12 to 15 minutes. The result is this impossibly silky, soft, trembling custard that jiggles when you move the bowl. You finish it with soy sauce, sesame oil, and scallions on top. The texture is somewhere between a soft tofu and a very delicate flan. It requires almost zero active time and feels deeply nourishing and gentle. Perfect for when you are exhausted and just need something warm and soft. So, I've been putting together something bigger. A full book with everything I've shared on this channel, from pantry hacks to restaurant secrets, all in one place. Not launched yet. Just want to know if it's something you'd actually use. Let me know in the comments. Okay, back to it. 12. Doubanjiang fried egg. A fried egg elevated by one key ingredient. You fry an egg in plenty of oil until the edges go crispy and lacy, then add a spoonful of Doubanjiang to the oil around the egg. Let it fry and caramelize for just 30 seconds, and flip the whole thing or just spoon that intensely flavored, spicy, savory, slightly smoky oil over the egg. Serve it over rice. It sounds unbelievably simple, and it is, but the Doubanjiang transforms a plain fried egg into something with layers of complex flavor. Chefs keep fermented bean paste in their fridge at home at all times precisely for situations like this. 11. Dan Dan mian. Simplified home version. Dan Dan noodles are one of those dishes where the sauce assembly is the main task. You mix together tahini or sesame paste, black vinegar, soy sauce, chili oil, garlic, and a touch of sugar in a bowl. Cook your noodles, drain them, and pour the sauce over the top. Add some briefly cooked ground pork with preserved vegetables if you have it, or just eat it with the sauce alone. The sauce is punchy, nutty, savory, and slightly sour all at once. It coats the noodles beautifully. From start to finish, with noodles boiling, this takes under 15 minutes and delivers enormous flavor. 10. Twice cooked pork. This Sichuan classic sounds laborious, but Chinese chefs have streamlined it completely. The pork belly gets boiled until just cooked, allowed to cool slightly, and then sliced thin. The sliced pork goes into a hot wok where the fat renders and the edges curl slightly. Then in goes Doubanjiang, black bean paste, garlic, leek or green pepper. The whole thing gets tossed together and finished with a splash of soy sauce. The first cooking is mostly passive boiling time, and the actual stir-fry takes 4 minutes. Chefs love this because the boiling step can be done ahead, or they use leftover cooked pork belly from whatever else they made. 9. Cold sesame noodles. These require zero hot cooking beyond boiling noodles. While the noodles cook, you whisk together sesame paste, soy sauce, black vinegar, garlic, sugar, chili oil, and a splash of the noodle cooking water to loosen everything up. Drain the noodles, toss them in the sauce, and top with julienne cucumber. Maybe a few strips of egg crepe if you feel ambitious, and some toasted sesame seeds. This dish is wonderful, both warm and at room temperature, which makes it ideal for meal prepping. Chefs love cold noodle dishes in summer because they require minimal heat and deliver deep, satisfying flavor. 8. Stir-fried water spinach with fermented tofu. Morning glory or water spinach is one of those vegetables that cooks down dramatically in about 90 seconds on high heat, which makes it perfect for lazy cooking. You throw it in a screaming hot wok with fermented tofu, which is the soft, creamy, funky white or red variety, garlic, and a tiny splash of water to prevent sticking. The fermented tofu melts into the oil and creates this incredibly savory, slightly pungent sauce that coats every leaf. The texture when done right is tender, but still has a slight bite. This is the kind of side dish that takes 2 minutes and makes plain rice disappear. 7. Lanzhou-style hand-pulled noodle soup at home. Before you panic about hand-pulling noodles, know that Chinese chefs at home often use a simplified version where they just stretch fresh store-bought noodles by hand rather than going through the full lamian pulling process. The broth is the real focus here. Beef bones, or even just a strong beef stock, gets seasoned with a spice packet, radish slices, and a hit of chili oil. Fresh noodles go in, topped with thinly sliced beef, cilantro, and white pepper. The broth does all the work, and the noodle pulling or stretching is more satisfying than technically demanding. It feels like a major meal, but most of the time is just the broth simmering. 6. Pork and preserved egg congee. This is a more specific version of plain congee that most Cantonese cooks consider the ultimate comfort food. You use raw pork slices marinated in soy sauce and cornstarch, along with chopped century egg added directly to the congee while it cooks. The pork stays silky because the cornstarch protects it, and the century egg breaks down slightly into the porridge, giving it this deep, savory, almost meaty richness throughout. Finish with white pepper, ginger, scallion, and fried shallots. This takes about 45 minutes of mostly unattended simmering and produces something that tastes like it came from a Cantonese restaurant. Chefs make a large pot and eat it for 2 days. 5. Soy sauce, chicken wings. This is the kind of braised dish that does most of its cooking while you ignore it. Wings go into a pot with soy sauce, dark soy sauce, oyster sauce, sugar, ginger, star anise, and enough water to barely cover. Bring to a boil, drop to a simmer, cover, and walk away for 30 minutes. The wings become these lacquered, deeply colored, intensely savory things that cling to the bone beautifully. Turn them once halfway through. The sauce reduces slightly into a glaze. Serve over rice with the sauce drizzled over. The active cooking time is maybe 4 minutes. Everything else is the stove doing the work for you. 4. Steamed pork ribs with black bean sauce. Dim sum restaurants make these to order, but they are genuinely one of the easiest things to make at home. You marinate chopped pork ribs in fermented black beans, garlic, soy sauce, oyster sauce, sesame oil, cornstarch, and a touch of sugar for at least 20 minutes. Then you spread them out in a shallow dish and steam for about 20 minutes. The ribs become incredibly tender. The black beans meld into the meat, and there is this wonderfully savory, garlicky sauce that forms in the bottom of the dish. Chefs love this because the steamer handles all the actual cooking while they decompress. 3. Fish-flavored eggplant. The name is misleading because there is no fish in this dish. The sauce is called fish fragrant because historically it was used for cooking fish, but here it coats silky, soft eggplant perfectly. You either roast or briefly deep fry the eggplant to soften it, then make the sauce from Doubanjiang, garlic, ginger, vinegar, soy sauce, sugar, and starch to thicken. The sauce is simultaneously spicy, sweet, sour, and savory. This is one of those dishes where the sauce recipe lives in a chef's muscle memory and can be assembled from pantry basics in 3 minutes. The eggplant absorbs every drop of that complex sauce. 2. Hot and sour soup. This is the kind of dish where you're basically just building flavor in liquid. Stock goes into a pot with wood ear mushrooms, bamboo shoots, tofu strips, and whatever leftover vegetables you have. Season with soy sauce, white pepper, black vinegar, and a little sesame oil. Thicken it with a cornstarch slurry and then swirl in beaten eggs at the very end to create those ribbons. The whole soup takes 15 minutes and the result is bracingly sour, deeply savory, and gently warming. Chefs love making this when they're feeling slightly under the weather because the vinegar and pepper combination is clarifying and restorative. 1. Plain rice with whatever is in the pantry. This final entry sounds like a joke, but it is completely earnest. The ultimate Chinese chef lazy meal is a bowl of perfectly steamed jasmine rice with any combination of condiments from the pantry. Fermented black bean paste, chili oil, soy sauce, sesame oil, pickled mustard greens, soy pickled chilies, Doubanjiang. You do not even need to cook anything extra. The rice is warm and starchy, and the condiments provide all the salt, fat, and flavor you need. Chinese pantries are stocked with such deeply flavored, complex fermented and pickled ingredients that a bowl of plain rice plus 3 condiments can be a genuinely satisfying and complete meal. Every professional Chinese chef has eaten this at some point after a long shift, standing over the counter, and been completely content. But if they're cooking in the restaurant, it's completely different. They use clever cooking tricks that they deliberately hide from you.